In the Soviet system, who remembers Nikita Khrushchev? I mean, not that you met him or that he was here at Chautauqua. He was not here, right? Chautauqua. Remember Khrushchev? Bald guy, right? So what happened to him? He was depersoned. He was removed from power and from Soviet history for a long time by the Politburo. So there was a kind of accountability, right? He got the Soviet Union into the Cuban Missile Crisis and all kinds of things, banged his shoe at the UN, embarrassing. What happened to Gorbachev? By the way, still alive. What happened to Gorbachev? There was an attempted coup against him too by his own Politburo. So again, some institutional accountability. Ultimately, he was removed by Boris Yeltsin and the Soviet Union just fell apart. There is no similar institution of accountability that constrains Vladimir Putin. This is how the system has evolved. He is uncontested, but that also makes it fragile to a certain degree and very brittle. And we can start to see some of his paranoia come out as well, his worry about being assassinated or poisoned. Evidently a worry perhaps about his own health. During COVID, he was really paranoid about people coming to visit him. You purportedly had to go through a long tunnel and be sprayed with disinfectant and be isolated for 2 weeks before that. And then you might remember the picture of Macron of France, the president of France, sitting at the end of the long table about that far away. Then you would do that as well. Even his defense minister, his foreign minister, all having to sit far away. So something's going on with his health, which we can talk about, and that may help to explain the timing of Ukraine. But one of the ways in which he is able to exercise power and conduct such an aggressive foreign policy is very tightly connected to the kind of domestic political system that he has built. And one of my arguments in the book is that this is not inevitable in Russia. This foreign policy of aggression against its neighbors, joining up in a sort of authoritarian international with places like China or Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. Russia has relationships under Putin with all of those countries who don't think he's doing anything really wrong in Ukraine unless it affects them. So they're not necessarily close, tight friends, but they're good friends in terms of the main goal, which is to create this new global order with Russia's resurrection. Mr. Putin has come to believe that Russia is a great power naturally, as I showed you in 2002, saying these things. And great powers control the little people in between them. And so it's a very 19th century view of the world. And in fact, Professor Putin has given his history of Ukraine and Russian relations several times, and it's bizarre, his understanding of Ukraine's relationship to Russia. And there's very little recognition of the fact that the empire, I'm talking about the Russian Empire, fell apart. In 1917, there was a revolution, and the Soviet Union that succeeded it fell apart in 1991. And in fact, in 1994, his predecessor as president of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, signed a memorandum in Budapest guaranteeing Ukrainian sovereignty in return for Ukraine moving the Soviet legacy nuclear weapons to Russian territory. So the only violation here of any promise ever was not over NATO expansion, but that in 1994. The other thing that he uses to justify this war in Ukraine is NATO expansion. But in fact, NATO hadn't expanded to Russian borders since 2009. 2008. So 6 years later, here he is in 2014 saying, we had to go in initially and grab Crimea because NATO was going to expand. And he said the same thing February 24th of this year. We had to. We were going to be attacked. Now, that's a blatant lie, of course. NATO was not about to accept Ukraine for membership. And in fact, we know that the war has prompted Ukrainian candidacy now, and Moldovan, for even membership in the European Union, but not NATO. So this is constructed, artificially constructed narrative that he has continued in Russia more generally.